Welcome back to episode 48 of Taking Charge of My Cancer podcast. And I have a really special guest today, Sarah McLean. Sarah is a two-time breast cancer survivor. Her first diagnosis was at the young age of 26, and her second diagnosis was at 34. Because of her experiences with breast cancer, she has dedicated her life to the emotional and spiritual restoration of survivors, as well as their families. She and her husband Steve had founded the nonprofit organization Project 31, which supports the breast cancer community through outreach, education, and financial support. She lives in Oklahoma City, and Steve and their two children, Colin and Tatum. So, Sarah, thank you so much for being here with me tonight.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. You wanted to tell us a little bit about your journey. How was your diagnosis? How do you find about your breast cancer?
So my husband and I had moved to Oklahoma City. Actually, it was the first day or the first anniversary, our first wedding anniversary back in 2002 from Dallas. And so we got here and I was 25 at the time. I just started working. We didn't have kids yet, newly married, and I didn't have a doctor in this local area. And I just needed to establish care with someone. So I did. And I had been doing self-exams since I was 18, just to know what my tissue felt like. And I had noticed something on my right side, but didn't really think it was anything. And after going to the doctor, she told me that it was probably just a cyst and stop drinking so much caffeine. And so I just was like, okay. And I moved on. Well, then 6 months later, I had noticed it had gotten bigger and it was more tender to the touch. And so my husband and I went back to the same doctor and were really having to be insistent on trying to get a mammogram because of my age. At that point, I had turned 26. She was not very willing to give me the referral for the mammogram. So we kind of had to fight for that and advocate for ourselves just to even get that. So then at that point, honestly, because of the way she treated me, I was reluctant to even schedule the appointment because I felt like she was treating me like I was being a hypochondriac. And so I thought, well, maybe this isn't anything. And so I waited a little bit longer. By that time, I finally went and ended up having the mammogram and fully thinking that they were going to come back and tell me it was nothing. But they came back in and told me, Sarah, we're concerned. We want to go ahead and do a biopsy. And so they did. I was by myself because I didn't think it was going to be anything. So I went by myself, and I'm sitting in the room kind of freaking out, like, what in the world? Like it was a whirlwind. And then the next day they called me and they said, it was breast cancer. And it was surreal. It was like an out of body experience. Like they're not saying that to me. And then at that point, it was like I was on an emotional roller coaster and what we call now a pink ribbon roller coaster. And so at that point, you're thrown into this world that I had no idea about any of it. And so we ended up doing a lumpectomy, and originally was going to do radiation, but it had ended up spreading in the cavity. And so I went back and had a double mastectomy, and then I did reconstruction. And being so young, we just wanted to, for me, I didn't know what I didn't know at that point, but I was trying to make the most educated choice that I thought I could. And so I ended up doing the reconstruction and then, tried to move on with life. And there was really no education or any kind of understanding that there might be some psychosocial needs for me as a patient, but also for my husband as a caregiver. And so a year down the line, honestly, I was imploding emotionally because I didn't know how to process my emotions. I didn't even know, first of all, what I was feeling, much less try to tell my husband what I was feeling. And so thankfully, he jokes, he was like, we were only married for a year at the time, so we still love each other, so we were going to make this work. So he was trying to find somebody for us to talk to. And there was no resource like American Cancer Society and Komen, and like there was nobody. And again, this was back in 2003. And so then finally, after 9 months of looking, he found a psychologist who happened to be a breast cancer survivor as well. And so he made the appointment. And honestly, I was terrified. Like I didn't want to go. And I felt like a sense of weakness to admit that I needed some emotional help or any kind of tools in my toolbox. And so finally I decided that I would go. And the first meeting that I went to with her, she really just told me her own story. And it was so validating because she helped me to understand that I had been going through a grieving process that I didn't even know was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And when she started explaining that to me, I just, broke down because I was like, wow, I'm not crazy. I'm not insane,
Mm-hmm.
that there is somebody who understands me. And then she was able to basically translate to my husband everything that I had been feeling. And I was like, man, why did not anybody tell us this? Why did we not have some kind of education? I get that you want to help our physical body. That is obviously the most pressing priority, but we are mind, body, spirit, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So we
Yep.
need, I feel like, equal emphasis in all areas to bring healing and wellness to our bodies, as we move forward. So we started going to her. It really opened this whole new world to me, which was amazing. And through my time with her, I really was just inspired and had just passion to want to come alongside other women and their families. I was like, I know I can't be the only person out here feeling like this.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, Steve and I, it was 2007 at that point, and we decided that we were going to establish a 501c3 and start raising money to provide financial scholarships for survivors and their families to be able to go to counseling, because it had been so beneficial for us. We wanted to give that same opportunity to other people as well, because when you're walking through this journey, it's so expensive, first of all, with all your medical bills, but then you might not be working full time, so then you have a reduced income, so then it really can't be a priority like it should be. You're like, well, I can't pay for that,
Right. Yeah.
so then
Yeah.
you're like, well, I guess we'll just wait. So we were like, no, it really should be the same priority as your physical health. So that's kind of where we started, and we established it, and we called it Project 31. And it was, our mission is to heal the scars that cancer leaves on the heart. And really, that's where it started. And then from there, I realized over time that my best connection point was probably going to be an oncology office or an imaging center, because those are going to be people you're going to keep coming back through there.
Mm-hmm.
But what I realized was I started sending letters throughout the state of Oklahoma and just saying, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing. But I needed to bridge the gap because of HIPAA. They couldn't give me a list of names. And so I was like, what do I need to do? And I'm a Christian. And so I really felt like God was giving me a calling to do this journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I really felt like he wanted me to create care packages to be able to offer to these women as a tangible way to just give them a gift, but also to invite them into a relationship. And so from there, it was very organic and very slow, which is honestly like fine, because I was still going through my own therapy. And then also I had two babies back to back, and I was working full time. So it was really more of a hobby, I think, really just to give myself purpose in my own pain, honestly. And then, over time, I just started doing the care packages, doing a little bit of scholarship here and there, doing little events, little gatherings, sharing my vision with people, and they were giving me money, and I was just slowly giving it out. Well, then in 2011, I I was approached by the imaging center where I was diagnosed, and they asked me if I would consider leading a peer support group.
That's awesome.
And yeah, and thankfully, the director of that imaging center was intuitive enough to know that a support group being led by a survivor would probably be more impactful because we speak the same language.
Yep.
And but honestly, I didn't want to do that. I was like, no, I don't want to go sit in a room of people and complain and whine about cancer. I was like, that's not what I want to do. But
Sarah, what was your profession? What were you working in before this?
well, some of my background. So before I moved to Oklahoma, I did court order wiretaps for the FBI, DEA, Secret Service.
Okay.
Then when I moved to Oklahoma, I started doing ministry. So I worked for a church for 10 years. And
Okay.
so my heart is definitely a ministry heart,
Okay.
So I was like, Lord, okay, what do you want me to do? And I really felt like he was saying, we're going to create environments of hope and encouragement. We're going to give people tools. We're going to give people hope. We're going to give them empowerment to live a life of wellness and restoration throughout this journey. I don't like to say beyond this journey, because there's so many women that their journeys all look different. And
Mhm.
so
Yep.
I don't want to just say that, because I feel like that's not fair. And so I said yes. And it was May of 2011. And a friend of mine who was a survivor as well, we agreed that we were going to do it together. And we showed up that first night, and it was 25 people came. And I was like, wow, this is a need, man. People have needs that are not being met. And I'm like, this is only one little imaging center. And so at that point, we just started meeting once a month. Well, then in August, I was scheduled for my annual MRI because I'd had a double mastectomy. I did MRIs, but I still did self exams too because I knew they couldn't get every cell, and I knew that. And so it had been 8 years. Well, I had noticed something on my right side. I thought it was scar tissue, but unfortunately, it was cancer again.
Oh my.
Well, I was 34 at that point, and I went in and they were like, "How long have you noticed that that was there?" I was like, "I don't know, maybe 6 months or whatever." They were like, "Let's go ahead and do an ultrasound. Let's see if we see anything." And I could just tell, ironically, I was in the same exact room that I had been in 8 years before.
Oh
I
wow.
laid on the bed and she put the gel on, and I'm watching her face, and I can just tell by the look on her face that she knew it was something, but she couldn't tell me, and so she was like, "I'm gonna have to go get the doctor," and she's like, "We're gonna have to do a biopsy." I was like, "Here we go again." And I just laid there staring at the ceiling, just like, "Lord, what in the world? I don't understand." And so then at that point, I left, and then the next day I was actually in Target shopping for the care packages, and they called me and they told me that it was cancer. And I just went to the car, and I really just had a moment to myself, and I really was like, I don't understand, but I kind of came to a place of peace with God because I was like, I believe you're good, and I believe that you give your kids purpose on this earth. And if my purpose happens to have cancer in that journey, and it gives me a voice and a platform and a place to be able to share your love and to bring hope to people, then that's what I want to do. And so at that point, I just kind of kept moving forward, and I started the whole process all over again, surgery, treatment, all that. So that kind of delayed me for a little while. And then, I honestly I left the church at that point once I finished treatment, and I wanted to pursue Project 31 full time, but I knew I needed still some time for my own body to heal and that kind of thing. So I really didn't start building the organization until 2015. And then at that point, I really established a board and started hiring some staff members. And so prior to COVID, we were collaborating with 10 cancer hospitals throughout the state of Oklahoma, providing peer support. But obviously that takes time, obviously, to have equity with this hospital. And then you also have to have women who are coming alongside. I can't be at all these places at the same time, which I knew that. My vision is really to have a national presence, but I knew that we needed to create a sustainable, healthy model locally, and that it would grow on its own, and which it has. And so now we start seeing other women who are coming through that they have like-minded vision and values. They have a desire to want to come alongside other women once they get through their own journey, and they're like, we want to walk with others, and be the support that someone was to me. And so now we have a group of 23 survivors on our team that we have. Usually I like to have 3 at each hospital, so that way they are able to steward those women, and so then I'm able to have kind of more of an overseer role at this point. And so yeah, we're focusing on that. And then also we are really trying to bring in some retreats too. That has been really helpful and beneficial because we're really passionate about keeping the marriages connected too. I feel like through the nature of breast cancer specifically, I see it over and over again, unfortunately, how marriages don't make it through this journey. Because and it's no judgment towards either party, but oftentimes men don't know what to do with a woman not having breasts, but also it steals every part of who God created us to be as a woman, from our hair, our breast, our fertility, our intimacy, every part of who we are. And so really just wanting to be intentional about trying to give couples tools that they need to try to learn how to communicate better together, how to have intimacy through this journey. And so that has been really beautiful to be able to offer that to couples. But then this year, we actually introduced a new retreat for our Thrivers community. And so we had a group of metastatic women get to go on a retreat together, which was awesome.
Right. That's so awesome.
It was really awesome. So we're just, taking it one step at a time. We're small, but we're trying to be good stewards with the resources that we have and try to be, just a loving presence in the world. So
that's so great. So, one thing that I love about doing this podcast is what I learn every day from people like you. It's like, oh my God, look at all these great hearts that are, in this world, to just be able to just give and try to help these patients who kind of like, you're going through all these journey, your own journey, and you handle things in a different way, but it's like just really how can we make things a little bit easier if you already went to that path. Like sometimes I'm glad and that I have not been diagnosed with cancer, but I walk along the way every day with patients and kind of like feel you guys pain. However, I cannot say I've been on your shoes, but I walk really close to you guys day after day. So kind of like I try to put on your shoes a little bit, to try to understand where things are coming from. So I'm so glad that you are able to bring this project, because you're right. A lot of the things in medical is about, okay, what can we do research wise to avoid recurrence? What can we do to make treatments better so you guys have better quality of life? What can we do to don't give you lymphedema so we can be better in the surgical side? But the mental health is so important, and you're right. That part, even in our system, which I am very proud of our system, but even here is a struggle. It's a struggle to go find counseling. It is a struggle because it's not that many counselors, and insurance doesn't pay.
Right.
So it is really hard. So and then sometimes patients really, everyone is willing to go to a support group and open themselves to just talk in front of people about how they feel or about the issues they have with their partners. So this is so great that you start to really looking at that other standpoint. So because this is huge. It's really changing everything, right? Is the fear, because you have cancer once and you're just gonna continue having. Every time that you have a test is the fear. Every time you feel something is the fear. And how do you live with that, right?
Right.
You mentioned a lot of changes because hormones, right? So I don't know if you were hormone positive, but when you get into all these treatments and then these hormones just play a huge game from the brain standpoint, mental standpoint, energy, and for somebody who you live with to understand that is difficult. So it's really, I'm so glad that you are really helping people out there, taking in consideration these other important elements. So that's really good. What type of resources did you use to help you to make decisions about your treatments?
Well, as you were saying that, it's hard as a patient, you don't know what you don't know. And so that's why I really, I feel like community is really important because it does allow you to hear other people's stories. It allows you to hear other resources, like you said, that have been beneficial for them throughout their process. So, for example, locally, we talk a lot about acupuncture. We talk a lot about integrative medicine to help minimize side effects, but also to help you as you move forward in survivorship. What does your wellness look like? We talk a lot about therapy options here. And when you were talking about that, the fear of, there's a lack of resources, of course, in counseling. We know that. But then if we can encourage patients to try to engage in some sort of community, that's a huge resource outlet because we have internal Facebook communities that are survivors only, that survivors can converse amongst one another and say, I'm HER2 positive, I'm triple negative, I'm pregnant, I'm whatever. And they can get feedback from others to see what, like cold capping, if they want to do things for neuropathy, if they want to do, so they learn things from one another. But we usually are trying to assess the needs of the women who are currently in like our physical groups, or even we put out some surveys sometimes and ask, so that way we can go ahead. We have equity with a lot of speakers here locally now that we can go ahead and bring on those speakers to try to give education to these women. Like you were talking about fear of recurrence. And so we talk a lot about that. We talk a lot about anxiety. We talk about depression. So we have therapists who will come on. So I was going to mention to you, especially being in Florida, we can still be a resource to you as well, because we have, through COVID, we decided to go online. So we have 2 online meetings, actually three online meetings a month. We have one the first Tuesday, which is more of a faith conversation. The third Tuesday is really more of an educational piece. And then we also have a Thrivers community that meets too. So depending on what you want to learn or hear, you're fine. depending on what you want to learn or hear about, we would advertise that. So you would see it on our Facebook, but also we have like an internal database that we send out to women as well. But we're always looking for resources. And there's always new things popping up too. Like even today, I have, so there's a group out of New Orleans. You probably know of them. They do a lot of reconstruction, but they have a new care house. So if you are coming from out of state, because they have a lot of patients that come from out of state to do reconstruction, they have a new home that you can go and stay for free for your family. So that way you don't have to incur that cost of staying, because they do have so many out of state people. So there's another organization called Charcheret. They are a Jewish organization out of New York. They provide a lot of like care boxes and things. So they do things for like kids. So if you have young children who are going through this with you, they you can request a free box that will be sent to them. It's like a fun box that they can do like activities. So there's all these different kinds of things that you can look at, you know, that we have a nurse navigator that works with us, and so she's a plethora of knowledge to be able to give you long lists depending on what your needs are of what you may need. So it's been awesome just over time, just establishing relationships with people here locally that we're able to really be a good connector of what the patients don't know that they need, that we're able to introduce those ideas to them. So it's been pretty cool.
That's great. If you can pick 3 tips that you learned to your journey and, you know, share with us, what will be those 3 tips like you will give to a patient that has been going through this like you?
You know, honestly, I would say number one, don't be afraid to feel. I think that I learned that the hard way. I pushed down my emotion so much for so long, because I felt like as patients, oftentimes we feel an irrational level of responsibility to protect our loved ones and their emotions. And so but also it's scary too. So it's like you don't want to feel everything because it's too much. And so we don't give ourselves permission to feel along the way. And so I would encourage someone to not be afraid to feel. And I would encourage someone to get in a community. I think, like you said before, it can be scary, yes, but you don't know what you don't know. And being in the community of other women is what opens up this whole new world. And through that community, you gain knowledge. And through that knowledge, you gain empowerment and you gain courage and strength. And so, and also too, because, you know, there are things that we say to our family that or to our survivor sisters that we can't say in front of our family, you know. And so it's safe. It's a safe place to be. And so that's why I like to encourage women to get in community. So I would not be afraid to feel, get in community. And the third thing, learn to laugh. You know,
I love that.
I think that, you know, and I'm even thinking, and I had a meeting earlier today and this came up, which was totally random, but I think it's funny. And now I can appreciate it, because so much of this is so serious all the time. And it's good for us to laugh. Laughter is good medicine. But a group of my survivor sisters that are thrivers, they're stage 4, they went on retreat. And I had mentioned that to you earlier. And they, you know how TLC, the learning channel on TV, they have all these different kinds of shows on TLC.
Yes.
Well, they get each other. They know where they are in their journey. And so they name themselves, their group text, they call themselves TLC's Plan My Funeral. That's the name of their group. And I was like, what? At first I was like, that's morbid. But then she was laughing. She was like, no, it's hilarious. We think it's awesome. And so I was like, you know, that's true. You know, try to find your laughter, and because that helps, you know. And so I don't know. I think that might be, and actually we actually had a therapist come one time. She's an integrative medicine specialist, and we did a whole laughter therapy session.
That's awesome. That's so great.
It was weird, but it was cool, and it worked. So yeah, I would say laugh.
That's great. How about the most painful lesson?
Yeah.
That's a hard one. I know.
Yeah. Mm. The most painful lesson. Most painful lesson. Mm. I would say painful because it was a journey to get to this place, but finding strength in the vulnerability. Because I feel like often as moms and wives and just women and whatever, business sector we may be in, we are constantly having to be strong. And I feel like our society in general has a persona on vulnerability, or what I think could be equated to weakness, but it truly isn't. Our vulnerability is one of, I think, our greatest strengths, because it lures people into intimacy and relationship, but it takes a lot of strength to be able to allow yourself to be vulnerable with others. And I feel like that has been my most painful lesson for myself, because I prided myself on being strong, and everybody's telling you that through your whole journey. You're so strong. You're so strong. I hate that. So many of us hate that. Don't say that. We are not. We are just doing the best we can. Like you would do the same. Like I'm no different than you. But and even like as a believer in, the Bible talks about that, when we are weak, that's when Christ is strong. And that's really what I want more than anything, is for his light to shine through me. And if it happens to be through that vulnerability, then that's what I want to do. And I wouldn't have said that before. And so now and I'm not saying I'm great at it. I'm working at it, and it's a painful lesson, because nobody wants to go share your stuff with everybody and to, expose yourself that way. But I think through that vulnerability is where we find healing too. And ultimately that's what I'm about. Because honestly, we all are going to die someday, right? But I feel like we're in this progression of healing and restoration in our life through our whole lifetime. And I want our spirit man to be as healthy and whole as possible. This shell is going to pass away. We all know that. But our spirit can be more alive than it ever has been. So that is what I want to see. And that comes through the vulnerability. Sorry, that was a long answer.
No, I love it though. That's one of the best answers I have had to the questions actually. Will be anything that you have that will be of value to the audience, and would you just share it with us?
Honestly, I mean, I think this is really cool that you talk to me about doing something special. You're doing something special. This is cool because you're putting your voice out there too, and you're trying to share with others resources that are available. And so I think this is a really neat connection, because you're in Florida, I'm in Oklahoma, but I can still help you and you can help me. So that's where I would want to share Project 31. Let your patients know, hey, I have a resource available to you. If you want to get on and have some community, there is a community. You can get online with them, whether it's an online meeting, if you want to get in their Facebook, and you can have some conversation with some women who are going to be encouraging and uplifting to you, but also give you space to be honest and vulnerable with where you are too, with an intention of trying to move forward in a healthy way. So I would say it's a good collaboration.
That's great. And you're absolutely right. Again, as I'm learning so much and knowing so many people, I already have this long list, right? Like, oh my God, I just interviewed this person yesterday and they told me about this book I want you to get. And somebody was telling me about, hot flashes and unable to sleep. And it's like, here you need to listen to my podcast. And this is this episode, and this is this pharmacist who is amazing and doing natural stuff with, to try to help with those symptoms and blah blah blah. So it has been like really great, and I didn't know any of this without getting to know you guys and getting all this information. So that has been really as well a wealth of information that I'm so happy to share with patients. So is any 3 books that you would recommend to the audience, and why?
Oh, 3 books, so I just finished a book called 5 Voices by Jeremy Kubicek, and it's about communication and understanding who you are as an individual to be able to be the best communicator you can with others. I feel like that's really been helpful. And also there's another book. Oh, I just finished another book too. Shoot, it was called Communication Code. It's by the same author as well. It kind of is an extension of this. You can tell I've been on this path of discovery. So that one was really good too. And there's actually another one that I'm wanting to read right now that I haven't read yet. I'm really excited about it. Let me give you the name of it. I had gone to a conference and she referenced it a lot when she was doing her session, and it's called The Myth of Normal. And it's about trauma, illness, and healing in a toxic culture.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds really good.
It was awesome. She's a therapist and she's a survivor as well. But so we did a local, we did an expo here, and she spoke from that. She referenced it a lot in her talk, and I was just like, wow, because she's talking about a lot of this. When we go through it, we have a lot of post-traumatic stress, and if you aren't intentional about going to therapy, if you don't have self-awareness, if you're not kind of understanding what's going on in your body, it can live in your body and you continue to have post-traumatic stress. Well, in that book, they talk a lot about this idea of post-traumatic growth. And I was like, okay, so it's kind of flipping the perspective and kind of how you move through it. And I was like, man, that is good. But it has like an assessment in there that you can go through. And I was like, man, we need that, because so many survivors don't even know that they're suffering from post-traumatic stress. And like when you're talking about anxiety and stuff, like it's real. Like it's not just a word. It is a real thing, and it doesn't go away, and it's like we have to learn how to like process through that with ourselves, So yeah, those are the 3 books that I would say.
How about podcast?
So podcast, this is random, but I like to listen. This is random. I like to listen to the Candace Cameron Bure podcast. She is funny, and she's the actress from Full House. Like she's
Okay.
DJ, so she has a podcast now, and it's Candace Cameron Bure podcast. But she's funny and she's encouraging. She's real, and I really like that. I would say the Pink Ribbon Roller Coaster, which is our podcast. So
podcast.
it's YouTube and podcast too, but it has a lot of our speakers that we've had on there. It has survivor stories, and we did it like intentionally to be short. So like if you're in treatment, if you're on your way to treatment, you can kind of just look at the different ones that we have on there, and it might be like just a little quick shot of encouragement to you. So that's a really good one. And then also there's another one called The Road Back to You that I like, and it is about I don't know if you've ever done the Enneagram, but they talk a lot. So it's kind of it's another like personality profile type book, but it's based on numbers, and it's a really cool book too. But they have a podcast that goes along with it, and they'll bring people on in different personality profiles, and they'll talk about communication and how this number communicates with this number, and what does that look like in relationship. And it's just really neat. It's a cool tool to use as well. But it's called The Road Back to You. So I really like that one too.
Okay, great. And then how can people find you? And I will put the description on the podcast notes, but
you can go to our website at project31.com, or you can, like I said, look up our podcast, The Pink Ribbon Roller Coaster. We are also on Facebook under Project 31, so they can find us there. And then we are on Instagram as well on project31.com. It's just all together.
Perfect. Awesome. Is anything else would you like to add before I let you go?
No, I mean, I just want to say thank you to you. I appreciate you reaching out. I appreciate your intentionality and your own effort to try to, love people well and try to share your voice and to share your encouragement to your patients. I mean, I'm sure you are a great gift to them. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. That's really sweet of you. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Again, it's great that something that you kind of like, was put it on your path, kind of make this happen, right? I'm sure that it wasn't because you will not be on the place that you are. So definitely I'm agree. God has a path for all of us. And so it's great that you're doing this amazing work for patients out there. I'm sure they appreciating it as well. So thank you again for spending time with me this evening, and you have a great rest of the evening.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.